If you've cruised the Mediterranean or the Caribbean, and you're now considering a British and Irish cruise, there are some really important differences you need to understand before you book. These itineraries work very differently, and if you go in expecting sunshine ports, quick walk-off days, and cruise-built terminals, that's where people get caught out. I've sailed a British and Irish cruise on Regal Princess, and in this video, I'll walk you through 10 things you need to know so you can plan properly and make the most out of your British and Irish cruise. You're going to encounter far more tender ports than you would on a typical Mediterranean itinerary. Ports like Falmouth, Dunleary, and Greenock often don't have deep-water cruise berths, so ships anchor offshore and use small boats to get passengers ashore. Tendering itself isn't a bad thing, but it does change how your day works. You're no longer just walking straight off the ship whenever you feel like it. You're working around tender schedules, group numbers, and sometimes weather conditions, which naturally makes port days feel a little more structured. Another thing people don't always realize is how tendering affects timing at both ends of the day. Getting ashore can take longer in the morning, especially if you're not on an early excursion, and getting back in the afternoon can feel more rushed if the weather changes or queues build up. That's why some port days feel shorter than expected, even when the ship is in port for a full day. Sea conditions also matter more when tender boats are involved. A calm morning doesn't guarantee a calm afternoon, and if the wind picks up, return journeys can be noticeably bumpier, and there is an upside to tender ports as well. Arriving by tender often gives you your best views of the ship, and your first proper look at the port from the water. Pulling up alongside a small harbour or town, rather than a cruise terminal, can actually feel like a much more memorable way to arrive. Most ports are working cruise ports towns than cruise-built terminals, and that's part of the experience. British and Irish ports generally aren't designed around cruise tourism in the way many Mediterranean ports are. You won't usually step off the ship into a purpose-built terminal with cafes, souvenir shops, and shuttle buses waiting. Instead, you're arriving in real working towns and cities that just happen to welcome cruise ships. For some people, that feels less polished, but for many, it's actually part of the appeal. It feels more authentic, quieter, and far less commercial, but it does mean you need to be a bit more aware of transport, timing, and planning. Many British and Irish ports are gateways, not the place people imagine visiting. This is one of the biggest things that catches people out on British and Irish cruises, where your ship docks is often a gateway port rather than the destination you're picturing. Holyhead in Wales is a perfect example. If you wander off the ship expecting mountains and castles, you won't find them straight away. Holyhead is a working commercial port, but to get to places like Carnarvon Castle or Snowdonia National Park will require planning and transport. The same applies in Dublin, where you dock in Dunleary rather than the city centre, or Greenock, which is the gateway to Glasgow and the Highlands, rather than the attraction itself. Because of geography and travel times, shore excursions on British and Irish cruises often make far more sense than people expect, even for experienced cruisers who normally prefer to do their own thing. That doesn't mean you have to book cruise line excursions. Local operators, trains, or pre-booked tours can work just as well. The key is recognizing that simply wandering off the ship won't always give you the experience you're hoping for on this kind of itinerary. On a map, the British Isles look compact, but in reality, travel times can be much longer than people expect. Narrow roads, coastal routes, traffic, and weather all add up. That's why all-day excursions are common on these itineraries, and why stops can sometimes feel shorter than planned. Once you understand this in advance, the day feels far less rushed and much more realistic. Weather is one of the biggest things people worry about on a British and Irish cruise, and it's also one of the most misunderstood. British and Irish weather isn't usually extreme, but it is very changeable. On my cruise, Cove was grey and drizzly, while Belfast and Northern Ireland was absolutely stunning with blue skies and sunshine. That contrast can happen not just between ports, but even within the same day. What really matters is how that changeability affects your plans. Wind can make it feel much cooler than the temperature suggests, especially on exposed coastlines or during tender rides. And a brief shower can be enough to put people off staying ashore if they're not prepared. This is why it helps to plan your port days with 4 seasons in mind. If you're comfortable, whatever the weather does, you won't feel rushed back to the ship or disappointed when plans need to shift slightly. Some of the calmest, most atmospheric moments ashore actually happen when conditions aren't perfect. If you go in expecting wall-to-wall sunshine, you'll probably be frustrated. But if you expect variety and plan for it, British and Irish cruises can be surprisingly rewarding. Packing for a British and Irish cruise is less about looking smart and more about being comfortable ashore in changing conditions. Layers, waterproofs, and comfortable shoes matter far more than dressy outfits. This isn't the cruise for packing outfits you never wear at home. Layers, a light waterproof, and comfortable walking shoes matter far more than formal wear. If you pack for reality rather than fantasy, days ashore feel easier and far more comfortable, whatever the weather decides to do. It's easy to think of a British and Irish cruise as staying close to home, but culturally, it changes far more than people expect. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Northern Ireland all feel very different once you're there. A British and Irish cruise isn't just one country repeated. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Northern Ireland all have their own histories, identities, and cultures. Even if you live in the UK, cruising around these regions gives you a different perspective. Ports feel far more varied than people expect, and the sense of place changes noticeably as the itinerary progresses. Most ports use pounds, but Ireland uses euros, which catches people out. It's a small detail, but it can catch people out when you're moving between ports quickly, especially if you're relying on cash rather than cards. Having a card that works easily in both currencies, or carrying a small amount of each, avoids unnecessary hassle ashore. And if nothing else, it saves you standing at the bar in Ireland, ordering a pint of Guinness, and suddenly realizing you've got the wrong notes in your hand. Most itineraries start in Southampton, so getting to the ship needs proper planning. The majority of British and Irish cruises sail from Southampton, so getting to the ship becomes part of the planning process. Trains, parking, hotels, and timing all matter more than people expect. Some smaller cruise lines do sail from ports like Liverpool, but Southampton remains the main hub, and planning this properly makes embarkation day far smoother. Now that you understand how British and Irish cruises really work, the next step is seeing how this plays out in real ports. Some days are easy walk-offs, others need planning, and a few work very differently to what people expect. My Regal Princess British and Irish Ports of Call video is on screen now, and it shows exactly how these days unfold in practice.